Formula One's most successful qualifier in history spent an entire season being beaten by his own teammate. Then, he did the one thing no engineer would recommend. He threw away a tool the rest of the grid swears by, and the beating stopped. There are 3 things you were told about this turnaround, and all 3 are wrong. Wrong about what changed, wrong about when it changed, and wrong about why a 41-year-old suddenly started fighting for pole again. The real answer is one decision made away from the track entirely, no new line, no secret setting. And the number that proves it is almost absurd. With the tool, he loses. Without it, he wins. We'll come back to that number. To understand how strange this is, rewind 12 months. In his first year at Ferrari, Hamilton was taken apart in qualifying roughly 19-5 against Leclerc in Grand Prix. Worse once you add the sprints, and not a single Sunday podium all season. A 7-time world champion who, for a while, looked finished. Now it's the 2026 summer break. He sits second in the World Championship, ahead of Leclerc on points. The only driver on the entire grid to finish every racing lap this year. Same driver, same garage, same fingerprints on the wheel. Everything about the results inverted in one winter, and the paddock still can't agree on what he actually did. One decision. So what if the thing that fixed him wasn't a new skill at all? What if he got faster by removing something, not adding it? Before we go further, hit subscribe. The Hamilton story this season rewards the long view, because the evidence behind this comeback runs directly against what the entire sport now believes about how you prepare to be fast. The biggest misconception about this comeback is that Hamilton unlocked some new qualifying style, a fresh line through the quick corners, a secret way of loading the tire that finally suits the 2026 car. It's a satisfying story. It's also wrong. Hamilton himself has spent the season quietly rejecting it. He says he isn't driving these cars any differently from the title-winning machines of a decade ago. Lighter, more forgiving, easier. Yes, but not some new technique he stumbled onto. So if the hands didn't change, and the talent was never in doubt, what did? Here's where it gets uncomfortable for anyone who wants a simple answer. The thing Hamilton changed isn't visible on any onboard camera. It doesn't happen on Saturday at all. It happens on the days between races, in a building most fans never think about, and what he changed there was to stop doing something the entire modern grid treats as non-negotiable. Not a new move, a subtraction. The tool Hamilton walked away from is the simulator. Ferrari's simulator in Maranello, by his own description, the best he has ever used. Run by a group of people he praises without reservation. Hold on to that detail. This is not a man trashing his team's equipment. Back in May, after a run of flat weekends that left him, in his words, in no man's land, Hamilton reached a blunt conclusion about the machine. He said the simulator was sending me in the wrong direction. So before the Canadian Grand Prix, he simply stopped using it. Now the number. Across the weekends where Hamilton did his simulator homework this year, he trails Leclerc in qualifying 4-0. Across the weekends where he skipped it, he leads 8-3. 4-0 with the tool, 8-3 without it. Same season, same rival, same car. Read that again. The same driver, the same car. The same teammate, and the entire qualifying balance flips depending on whether he sat in a simulator that week. Since he put the tool down before Canada, he has outscored every driver on the grid, Leclerc included. Asked how much skipping it had helped, he gave a one-word answer: massively. So why would practicing hurt him? This is the mechanism, and it's more logical than it sounds. A simulator is only as good as its correlation to the real car, how closely the virtual world matches what the tires and the track actually do on Saturday. When correlation is good, you arrive with a direction already dialed in. When it's poor, you arrive having confidently learned the wrong thing. Hamilton's description is brutal in its simplicity. He'd do all the work in the sim. Find a balance he was happy with. Get to the track and everything would be the opposite. Picture spending your one day of preparation memorizing the wrong map, then being handed the real one an hour before the exam. Then he put a number on it that stops you cold. 20 years of simulator work, and only once did the setup he built virtually turn out to be the exact one he qualified with. Singapore, he thinks, 2012, once, that's the loop closing on itself. A tool that points you the right way one time in 2 decades isn't a map, it's noise dressed up as data. For a rookie, noise is still better than nothing. But for a driver with Hamilton's mileage, it was actively overwriting an instinct that was already more accurate than the model. That explains why removing it helped. It doesn't yet explain what he replaced it with because you cannot walk into qualifying with no preparation at all. Something filled the gap. And that something is the real reason this only worked for him. So picture the two versions of a Saturday. In the first, the simulator version, Hamilton spends a day before the weekend chasing a balance in the virtual car. It feels fast. He builds his confidence around a specific front-end bite, a specific rear stability on the way into the corner. Then, he arrives at the real circuit, and the car underneath him behaves like a different animal. The front he trusted washes wide. The rear he thought was planted steps out on entry. Now he isn't refining a good baseline, he's unlearning a bad one. Burning practice laps and mental bandwidth just to get back to zero, with qualifying closing in fast. On television, you'd never see the cause. You'd only see the symptom, a 7-time champion looking half a beat off, tidy but not sharp, a tenth adrift, and unable to say why. Now the second version. He skips the sim entirely and instead sits with his engineers and the real numbers mid-corner balance, mechanical grip, how he approaches each corner, brake balance. The exact thing that had quietly been hurting him for months. Not a simulation of the problem itself. No virtual detour. He walks in with his own feel as the reference and the real data as the check. And what the viewer sees on Saturday is a driver who looks like himself again, decisive on entry, leaning on the car, stitching the lap together in one clean piece. Same hands. Cleaner information. Now watch how far the recovery actually went. Because this is where the numbers stop being abstract. Take Hungary, the last race before the break. Hamilton put his Ferrari on provisional pole at a circuit where he hadn't started a Grand Prix from the front in years. For a few minutes he was on course for a pole that would have been his first in a full Grand Prix since 2023, at the very track where he last managed one. Then, Norris found a final sliver and pipped him by 12 thousandths of a second. 12 thousandths. From a man who, 12 months earlier, was being comfortably beaten by his own teammate every Saturday. A grid penalty for impeding dropped him to 5th afterwards, and that's a separate story, but the raw pace was there. Undeniable. Milliseconds from the top. Keep that image. Now compare the two philosophies sitting inside one Ferrari garage. Leclerc still uses the simulator. He's still ferociously fast. Over one lap he edges Hamilton in qualifying even now. So this was never a claim that the tool is broken for everyone. It's the opposite. For Leclerc, raised in this era, the simulator is a native language. For Hamilton, it's a translation, and something was being lost in it. One driver needs the model, because the model is how he learned the car. The other has 2 decades of reference the model can only get in the way of. Same building, same rig, same engineers, 2 drivers who need completely opposite things from it. The tool that levels the grid for a 19-year-old is the one a 41-year-old can finally afford to ignore. That's the real discovery of Hamilton's season. Not a setting, a self-diagnosis. He worked out that the standard preparation every modern driver treats as mandatory was, for him specifically, subtracting performance instead of adding it, and he had the standing and the stubbornness to override it. Would another driver have had the nerve to throw away the tool his whole team is built around? Most couldn't. A rookie who ditched the sim would be flying blind. Hamilton ditched it and could finally see. So here's what the title question was really asking. Underneath, what is Hamilton's new qualifying style? The honest answer is that there is no new style. There's an old one. The same feel, the same instinct that won 4 titles that had been buried under a year of bad information. He didn't learn to go fast. He removed the thing that was telling him to go slow, and that reframes every result you just heard. The near pole in Hungary, the climb to second in the championship, the sudden parity with the fastest one-lap driver in the sport, none of it came from a discovery. It came from a subtraction. The suddenly so fast isn't sudden at all. It's a driver who was always this fast, finally unplugging the one input that kept pointing him the wrong way. The new style is that he trusts himself again. That's the whole secret. And it's the one upgrade no rival can copy, because you can't download 20 years of feel. Now the story gets a deadline. The season restarts at Zandvoort on the 21st of August, a bumpy, banked, wind-blown circuit that punishes any car you can't place with total confidence, and then Monza, a week later, all straights and slipstream. Two tracks that could not be more different, and both are tests of the same theory. Zandvoort in particular is exactly the kind of low-grip, unfamiliar-feeling surface where a driver who has thrown away his simulator has nowhere to hide. If Hamilton keeps qualifying near the front on wildly different circuits without ever going back to the simulator, the self-diagnosis holds. His feel really is a better guide than the model. That's the confirming evidence to watch for. But there's a clean way to disprove it too. Sooner or later he'll hit a weekend at a track he doesn't know cold, in shifting conditions, where a good simulator genuinely would have helped, and if he stumbles there, the sim skeptics get their case back. Underneath all of it sits the championship maths. He's second, ahead of Leclerc but 50 points behind Antonelli's Mercedes with 11 rounds to run. Parity with your teammate wins you respect. It doesn't win you an 8th title. For that, near poles have to become actual poles. And second rows have to become front rows, and he has to keep finding those tenths without the crutch he threw away. The tool is gone. The margin for error went with it. Now the strongest argument against everything I've just laid out, and it's a serious one. Plenty of sharp people in the paddock think the simulator story is, at best, a coincidence Hamilton has talked himself into. Former team boss Otmar Szafnauer put it bluntly, it isn't a controlled experiment. Nobody can prove the sim would have made those weekends worse. Maybe he'd have done just as well with it. And the respected engineer Rob Smedley argues the exact opposite of Hamilton's thesis. In these 2026 cars, with their brutal energy deployment demands, the simulator has become more critical, not less. Then there's the inconvenient timing. Ferrari have been bolting small upgrades onto the car almost every weekend, and Hamilton has spent a whole season adapting to a new team. Maybe the sim decision is just a story the results happen to flatter correlation wearing the mask of cause. It's the honest possibility, and it's exactly why Zandvoort matters so much. So which is it? Did Lewis Hamilton genuinely outthink the entire modern approach to preparation, finding speed by trusting his own feel over a machine everyone else depends on? Or did a veteran get lucky with timing, credit a hunch, and ride a fast, improving Ferrari to a comeback the simulator would have delivered anyway? Mercedes builds title cars around the model. Hamilton just threw part of the model away. Tell me who's right in the comments and subscribe, because Zandvoort settles more of this than the standings will.